So what do you expect me to say?
Let's get him!
I know you feel this way. Coming after you.
Hey there, what's up internet? My name is Blacklight Attack and welcome to part 3 of my coverage of the Pyromania update. This is going to be covering all of the new weapons and other stuff that they added to the game. So I figured first off, let's get the Pyro Vision stuff out of the way. Again, if you haven't seen it yet, go check out Meet the Pyro because this does contain spoilers for Meet the Pyro. Now, if you log in before July 5th, you will get the Pyro Vision goggles in vintage quality. If you log in afterwards, then don't worry because you can still get it. It's sort of like the Ghastly Gibbous. If you dominate somebody who's wearing the goggles, you get an achievement, I think, and then you gain a non-vintage pair. So you can still get it no matter when you log in. But if you're seeing this video or learning about this this update after July 5th, or you just missed the event entirely, don't worry, you can still get your Pyrovision goggles. Now, that allows any class to equip it as a miscellaneous item and then see Pyrovision. And that's just, you know, the sparkly land of magic that we were discussing in the first video. There are several items that have to do with Pyrovision. The first two are actually just reskins of pyro weapons. The flamethrower has been reskinned and they made the Rainblower, which is sort of a horn-like object that blows magic and rainbows and bubbles. And the Lollychop, which is a giant lollipop that simply takes place of the fire axe. It's just another reskin. Now what's interesting about these is that you can only see them in Pyrovision. You have to equip them in order to see them in Pyrovision, and if you have either of them equipped as a Pyro, you'll also see Pyrovision. But if you equip the Rainblower as the Pyro, you will see Pyrovision. But if another player isn't in Pyrovision, they don't have it active, they will see you just toting around a regular flamethrower, whereas if you're holding the Lollychop, it'll just look like a fire axe to them. Also pertaining to Pyrovision, there are two miscellaneous items for the Pyro: the Burning Bongos, which replace his grenades, and the Infernal Orchestrina, which is like a music box that replaces his oxygen tank on his back. Both of those also can only be seen in Pyrovision. You have a chance to get these out of the piles of ash that are also pertaining to this event. Moving on to that, you may have noticed that all the miscellaneous strange mystery items that were leading up to this event have now been incinerated, turning into the roasted goldfish and the charred pocket lint, etc., etc. They're basically just piles of ash. They're all interchangeable as they always were, but now you can craft 4 of them together to create a pile of ash. And the pile of ash sort of acts like a crate, except it's free. Unfortunately, it will mostly unbox another crate, in this case the Scorch crate, which has to be opened before the 11th of July with a Scorched key, which is the same price as a regular key, but those keys will also expire after 7/11. Now, the Scorched crates can contain either a strange Lollychop or Rainblower, or one of the many miscellaneous items that they added for a whole bunch of different classes. But out of the pile of ash, you also have a chance to get a regular Lollychop, a regular Rainblower, or one of the 2 Pyro miscellaneous items. So it's definitely worth it to put them all together, craft as many as you can, and unbox as many as you can. You might just get a bunch of Scorched crates, but you also might not. Now remember, everything that has to do with the piles of ash and the crates only goes until the 11th of July. So if you're seeing this video after that, I'm sorry, but it's too late, you missed it. Now, this is actually not technically part of the Pyromania update, but it does seem to be purposely timed around the same, but there's some sort of love affair going on between Adult Swim from Cartoon Network and Valve. And right now, you can get a free hat if you sign up for their website. You have until July 4th to register for their website. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. But basically, when you subscribe to their newsletter, they will email you a coupon code for a free Robot Chicken hat. Again, you only have until July 4th, and you won't get it right away. If you haven't signed up yet, if you sign up now, you will get it on the 5th of July. Speaking of cosmetic items, now any item that sort of has a little personality to it, like the Itsy Bitsy Spider or the Alien Swarm Parasite, will now show up as an assist with you on the kill feed whenever you get a kill if you're wearing one of those items. If somebody actually did assist you on the kill, it won't show up, and it doesn't take away points or anything, but it's just a kind of funny little thing that they added. Nobody's really sure why. Well, let's get into the meat of the episode, and that is going to be the weapons in the City on Fire weapon pack. They added 6 totally brand new weapons to the game, 2 for the scout, 2 for the sniper, 1 for the soldier, and 1 for the pyro. We're just going to go straight down the list as it is on the website, and we'll go over each one individually. First up is the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol. It gives you plus 15 maximum health, and you never take falling damage while you're using it. The downsides are it has a 25% slower firing speed, and you take 50% more fire damage when you have it equipped. This thing is pretty interesting. Obviously, you'll want to use it for the stats that it gives you, not for the weapon itself, because obviously it's just a straight downgrade to the pistol when you look at it that way, but 15 health is a pretty big boost, especially for the scout who really can use it. Now, obviously, you can't stack that with the plus 25 health from the Milkman set. I forget what the entire set is called, but that requires you to have the Mad Milk on, so you can't stack those two. Now, it is pretty difficult to actually deal a decent amount of damage with this weapon all at once, just because its slower firing rate makes it less spammable. But overall, it's a pistol. It does its job okay. But the 50 fire damage is a huge part of that. You're going to die to pyros almost instantly if you let them catch you. And that's always a risk that you're going to take with that weapon, is that a pyro is going to ambush you. Obviously, as a scout, you're good at staying away from a pyro, but if it even tickles you, you're in trouble. One thing that's interesting to think about is that if this thing ever gets cleared for use in 6v6, I don't know how many 6v6s really allow the new weapons, but I know one of the Highlander leagues recently allowed all weapons in the 2011 tournament. But if this ever gets cleared for 6v6 use, I mean, pyros are almost never used in 6v6, so this would be a pretty damn good upgrade to the stock pistol. Moving on to Babyface's Blaster, the new shotgun primary. This thing is 40% more accurate than the standard scattergun. It builds boost whenever you hit an enemy, and you run at up to double speed when you're at maximum boost. The higher your boost meter goes, the faster you move. The downsides are you deal 30% less damage with this weapon, and you start off 35% slower than your average scout. Also, if you ever jump, you lose all of your boost. So this thing just screams gimmick. Because of its increased accuracy, it does perform better at a range, and that's good because you really need to be at a range in order to build your boost up a little bit before you actually start fighting. One thing that's interesting to note with this weapon is that dealing damage with any weapon will increase your boost, not just the shotgun. So you can actually harass at long range with your pistol in order to build up your boost, and that works just fine. I wouldn't really recommend using this thing with the pocket pistol because it doesn't deal as much damage as the stock pistol, so it's harder to build your boost, and on top of that, if you get caught by a pyro before you've built any boost, you're in some real trouble. Now, as a weapon, the damage decrease is pretty major. You really can't deal that much damage. I think a full meat shot only deals about 76 damage. It's not great. But double speed on a scout, that is truly insane. You can race around at 1,000,000 miles a minute on this thing. And one thing that I quickly noticed is that boost is not at all hard to build. You don't really have to deal much damage in order to get to full boost. You can actually get to full boost without even dealing enough damage to kill a 125 HP class. Once your boost is built up a bit, you actually won't miss jumping all that much, especially because you can still fall. You just can't hit the jump button ever. But also you dodge just fine as long as you have enough space to move around when you're that fast. But you're playing a scout. Your whole job is to find alternate routes to flank people and to surprise them from angles that they don't expect, and a lot of times you need your vertical movement in order to do that. So it's a huge trade-off for a lot of speed and a lot less damage. But if you do want to take a flanking route, again, it's not going to hurt you all that bad because you can build up your boost rather quickly once again. Overall, it's a really gimmicky weapon. I don't see this being really good or viable in any sort of competitive standard, but it is pretty fun. That's all I can say about it, is that it's fun. It's not the most fun weapon in this set, but it's interesting enough to keep me trying it, at least for a little bit. The only thing is its major upside is also sort of a downside. When you're moving this fast, I find it really hard to hit anybody. Maybe I just need a little bit more practice or something, but it is really difficult to hit anybody when you're moving at 1,000,000 miles a second. And one final note, I know what you're thinking, and no, it does not stack with the Criticola speed boost. Moving on to the Sniper, he's got two weapons that are actually silenced. It doesn't really have any effect on the game, but they both look and sound really awesome. Actually, all the weapons in this update look and sound really good, except for the Beggars Bazooka, but it's supposed to look bad. It's kind of made of trash. But anyways, new secondary is called the Cleaner's Carbine. We finally got a new SMG. Now this thing is basically the SMG version of the KGB, where when you get a kill, you get 3 seconds of crit boost. And the downsides, it only has 20 rounds in a clip instead of 25, and it has a 35% slower firing speed. Additionally, it doesn't deal any random critical hits. This thing is pretty damn interesting as a weapon, to be honest. I found that its downsides are noticeable, but they're not detrimental enough to give up the crit boost, especially because sometimes when you're cornered by a team that's flanked you, just taking out one of them before they really go on the offensive can turn the tide of battle because you can chain crit boost with this thing. Also, if you get ambushed by a spy, you can take him out with the SMG, get your crit boost, and then use it with your primary down the field. That way you can just fire off the equivalent of a headshot without actually lining up a headshot. I think I prefer the Tribalman Shiv with this weapon because it slowly ticks down its damage rather than dealing it all in one chunk, so it's easier to hit them once with your Tribalman Shiv, and then the bleed while you pick at them with the SMG will bring them further into the death range, and ideally the bleed should wear off right before they die, allowing you to finish them off with the SMG and get your crit boost. As for primaries, it really works with any of them, but I would say, if anything, the Sydney Sleeper of all things benefits most from it. Since it's not capable of dealing headshot crits on its own, it needs this weapon in order to deal crits. But I don't ever recommend that anybody use the Sydney Sleeper, so take that with a grain of salt. Next up is the new sniper rifle primary for the sniper, and that is the Hitman's Heatmaker. This is probably my favorite weapon out of the entire update. This thing is good, it looks great, it sounds great, and it's fun. Whenever you get a kill or an assist, you gain focus meter. It takes 3 kills to fill up your focus meter, and 1 kill is worth 3 assists, so if you were going all with assists, it would take 9 to fill up the meter. You activate your focus meter by firing the weapon once it's full. When your focus is active, you get a 25% bonus to your charge rate, and you don't unscope between shots. The downside is, it penalizes you for going for body shots because you deal 20% less damage on all body shots. This is what the bizarre bargain always should have been. It encourages headshots and it discourages body shots. It trains you and rewards you for getting headshots, but it doesn't give you a huge penalty if you do take a body shot or if you miss. The gun also has some visual effects too. Headshot kills with it cause a decapitation, which looks awesome. And when focus is activated, you do get tracer rounds, which can be looked at as a downside, but it's not that bad. Interestingly, while you're in focus, if you switch to your SMG, it will also fire tracer rounds. The whole set is actually a reference to Leon the Assassin, and he's got the hat and glasses to go with it, and that's pretty damn awesome. I always love a good reference to a good movie. Honestly, pretty much any loadout works with this thing. I'm partial to Heatmaker, Carbine, Tribalman Shiv, or Heatmaker Girardi Bushwhacker. Next up is probably the most interesting entry in the entire update, and that is the Beggars Bazooka. Just looking at it, it's kind of hard to understand how exactly it operates. It says hold fire to load up to 3 rockets and release fire to unleash the barrage. You also have a 3-degree random spread on the accuracy of your rocket, and overloading the chamber will cause a misfire. Additionally, it can't collect ammo from dispensers. So what does it all mean? Well, this thing is really interesting. It always sits at 0 rockets loaded. You can't preload this thing. You can only load a rocket the second you're going to use it. And as it said before, you can hold fire to load up to 3 at a time, and when you release, he fires all of them in quick succession. So basically it's a spam weapon, but you kind of have to think ahead of what you're doing because loading a rocket takes a second, so you can't really just fire at enemies on reaction. It does do a lot of damage to targets at close range or targets that are clustered tightly together, but you can't really shoot at your own feet when you've loaded 3 rockets if somebody surprises you because you'll just kill yourself. Also, taking out sentries at a distance can be pretty tough because 3 degrees projectile deviation doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a huge amount over a range. You'll also find yourself just sort of walking around preloading rockets and then just firing them at nothing, because if you hold the rockets in for too long, the weapon will explode and deal a hefty amount of damage to you. You're probably going to die if you're not at full health. The overload explosion can also hurt enemies, but it's not really a viable tactic. It's sort of like an equalizer taunt kill if you do get anybody with it. One thing that I found the overload useful for is that if you're at full health, it'll actually put you into range to move at max speed with your escape plan, so you don't have to rocket jump in order to damage yourself. That's another thing, rocket jumping with this thing is kind of weird. You can still rocket jump with it, but the timing is kind of weird to get used to because it takes a second to load the rocket and then jump. Now, if you load all 3 rockets and then rocket jump, you sort of become a mobile weapons platform. Only the first rocket will cause your jump and deal damage to you, and the other 2 you can sort of aim. So if you have 3 rockets loaded and all of a sudden a group rounds the corner at you, you can use it as both an escape and an attack at the same time. The inability to collect ammo from dispensers isn't that big a drawback, as usually dispensers and enginettes are built near a metal source anyway, but just keep in mind that you shouldn't steal metal from your Engie if he needs it. Let him build his nest. Due to the delay on actually attacking with this weapon, I don't see it being competitively viable at all, but it actually is really fun, and I'll probably find a lot of use for it in pubs. The amount of damage this thing can do to a heavy in one blast is actually really impressive. If you get lucky enough with your weapon spread, you can actually take out a heavy in one barrage. Also, I wasn't able to pull this off against any real-life players, but against bots I did find out that you can actually juggle an air shot with a single barrage if you move the barrel fast enough. It's pretty hard to time, but once you get it down, 2 rockets can be connected. I would really love to be able to do this against a moving target, but I just haven't quite nailed it yet. I would definitely recommend the shotgun with this thing, because the shotgun will be the only reliable way of dealing damage if you're using this. And when you're moving through tight corridors, you should always have your shotgun out, because it'll allow you to react to anybody coming around the corner at you, which the Beggars Bazooka can't do without taking a second to load a rocket and then blowing you up. I do have to admit that when I looked at this thing, my first thought was buff banner. And I tried it, and just like the weapon itself, it's not viable, but it is fun. Being able to fire 3 mini crit rockets at one time at somebody is just a huge fuck you. And then for the melee weapon, I would recommend the escape plan. And finally, we have the Scorch Shot, the new flare gun for the Pyro. Looking at it, it says the flare knocks back a target on hit and ignites enemies in a small radius with a 50% damage penalty. Now this thing is pretty damn interesting. It actually knocks back with the same force no matter what range you hit the target at, and it'll only knock back on a direct hit. If you do directly hit a target with the flare, it'll sort of flounder around and then hit the ground and explode, as it says, setting additional targets on fire. But you can also set targets on fire by hitting a surface near them like a wall or a floor or an obstacle, but in this case it won't bounce. One thing to note is that not only is the damage on this thing reduced in comparison to the other flare guns, but it also doesn't crit burning targets, which really sucks because it really just deals terrible damage. Now, like the detonator, this thing does have a flare jump, but maybe it was just me, but the flare jump seemed kind of inconsistent on it. I couldn't quite get it every time. Maybe the timing is just slightly different. But either way, I'm 95% sure that it's not as powerful as the flare jump on the detonator. The upshot is, with its lower base damage and no penalty to self-damage inflicted like the detonator has, it actually costs very little health to flare jump with this thing. In addition to its mobility, this thing's main purpose is long-range harassment. It is fantastic at long-range harassment. It can keep enemies on fire, and when you're knocking them back, it's going to give them a huge amount of problems trying to stay in position. This thing would be really useful on the Doomsday map, because not only can it set an entire team on fire, but it can also knock them off the platform. Obviously, the knockback doesn't do too much for you in close range since you have an air blast anyway, but if you're using the Phlogistinator or the Backburner, it might be worthwhile to keep this thing around because it provides a pseudo air blast. You actually have to be accurate with it, so it's much harder with the air blast, but if somebody was pressuring you and you needed to make an escape, it might save your bacon. It can also be used for a sort of weird pseudo puff sting if you're using the Extinguisher, so that would also probably be pretty useful if you're using the Backburner or the Phlogistinator. If I had to recommend a setup with this thing, I'd probably say Phlogistinator and Extinguisher. Anyway guys, that'll do it for the Pyromania update. Now obviously these weapons have only been out a very short amount of time, so this is more of a first impressions video. I can't really say for sure how useful all of these things are going to be, and there may be certain aspects to them that I'm not just quite seeing yet, so we'll have to see how they pan out as it goes on, not to mention any balance changes that they might make later on. But hopefully you found this video informational. If you found this video informational, or if you just liked it, please consider hitting the like button. It does help me out when you do that. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and leave me a comment in the comment section below. What do you think of the new weapons? Personally, I'm having a lot of fun with them. Anyway, that does it for me. My name is Black Light Attack. Take it easy, everybody.